Okay, Kirsten, your thoughts.
I'm going first as
Women
the lady. Well, I think this is great, and what Secretary Panetta said was exactly right, which is it's not that every woman can do this, but every woman should have an opportunity to do it. And if they are capable of doing it, then they should be able to. Now, I don't think the standards should be lowered, and I don't think we should put anybody in danger. But for the few women, and let's face it, it's probably few women that are going to be able to have the same the qualifications that are needed. They shouldn't be denied the opportunity.
Judge.
I am absolutely thrilled by this. This is a collectivist president deciding that people should be judged as individuals and not as members of groups. This is someone willing to say the old military prejudices against blacks, against gays, and now against women were stereotypical, not founded in facts, often founded in ignorance, bias, and prejudice, are now history. Each person in the military will be judged for combat and for leadership and for command based on their skills and ability, not on the basis of some group to which they are a member as a consequence of birth. Now, I say that as somebody who rarely agrees with these guys, as you know. So I think this is a great decision, and I hope it works.
Marines, such as Ryan Smith, who you heard in Jennifer Griffin's piece, a retired sergeant who served in Iraq, think differently. They think it puts lives at risk. Take a listen.
It is very true that there is a difference in strength between men and women. For example, my first sergeant was mortally wounded when we were in Iraq, and he was in the turret of an amphibious assault vehicle, and two men had to jump up and physically pull him out of the turret to get him to a medevac. He was a 6'5", roughly 250-pound man. I haven't seen a woman yet that would be able to pull that man out of the amphibious assault vehicle and try to get him to a medevac.
So when you hear that,
isn't that a gross generalization? And wouldn't somebody who'd be in proximity of battle, in the type of equipment he's talking about, in close quarters, not be there unless they were capable of doing everything that would be reasonably expected of them? So to say all women, all men, no women, no men, is the type of generalization that doesn't belong in the government and doesn't belong on the battlefield.
Charles.
At the risk of producing a dull unanimity, let me just say that there are equities and, I think, good faith arguments on both sides. Obviously, on the pro side, women in the military welcome this. They want the opportunity. Second, whenever you open up anything that a part of society has been shut out of, you're increasing the pool of talent from which you can draw. Now, the argument on the other side is that there's a reason why we have professional men's basketball and a separate league where you have women's basketball. There's a reason why in the Olympics you have the men's decathlon and the men's boxing and the men's weightlifting, because if the women were to compete with the men, they would not have a chance. Now, the differences are clearly not a matter of discrimination or prejudice. They are simple a physical fact. It's true that in a more high-tech army that makes less of a difference. This isn't exactly Agincourt. We're not wearing chainmail and wielding battle axes, but nonetheless, there's still an element of strength and endurance which is required. So I think the way to deal with this is ultimately to say, you will allow those few women who can meet the standard that the men do, but you shouldn't be lowering standards. And that will produce a smaller number of women than men, and that is a result of the fact that on height, on weight, on strength and endurance, the women's bell curve is to the left of the men's. So as long as you don't lower the requirements so that the numbers will look more equal, I think it's a good idea.
You had people like O'Hanlon from Brookings who had concerns back in November, saying, as you mentioned, there were just small numbers of women who had expressed wishes to be in the front lines, that perhaps training to get them in special forces, to get them in those positions would be the way to go piecemeal at first. Now you're going to see how this works out. The military service chiefs have until May 15th to tell the defense secretary what jobs will still be excluded.
Look, I mean, Israel does this. They have women. I mean, they have to be in the military, and they passed something in 2000 saying that men and women women cannot be barred from anything that men are allowed to do, and they have a very effective military. So, but what they do is they don't put people into combat situations that they aren't qualified for or strong enough for. And I think as long as they as Judge was saying, don't do a collectivist approach to this and do it individually, then I think it'll be effective.
Next.